Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. My name is Drew. I'm an exercise physiologist and registered Chinese medicine practitioner. And in this video, we're going to be looking at active insufficiency. In the previous video, we looked at passive insufficiency. This is the opposite. So in active insufficiency, what's happening is that the muscle contracts or shortens, and the more it contracts to a shorter position, the less force it can generate, so it becomes weaker. And so in this example here, we're looking at a lying leg curl, and we're looking at the hamstring, and we have this graph which is called the length tension relationship. So kind of at 100% of the resting length, the muscle is able to generate a lot of force. Okay, but then as the muscle contracts or shortens, it has less ability to generate force. And then at the other end, the more it lengthens, it has less ability to generate force. So the longer the muscle is going to be, that's going to be more moving towards passive insufficiency, and the shorter the muscle is, it's going to be moving more into active insufficiency. So we're just going to go back a little bit to this diagram here. It's a good way of describing it. So, and as always, we're using the Muscle and Motion app, and definitely jump over and get yourself a subscription on it. It's a great app if you're trying to learn anatomy and movement science, if you will. So here we have actual muscle fibers. So the orange ones are actin, which is the thinner ones, and the big one in the middle here is the myosin, which is the thicker one. And you have the little diagram of the guy here. And what happens when a muscle contracts is that they kind of cross bridge and ratchet, and they slide the actin muscle fibers across the myosin muscle fiber. So you'll get a little bit of this kind of ratcheting happening here. So here where these two fibers are almost touching, connecting, that's going to be active insufficiency, because there's no more space for the muscle fibers to actually slide across or contract across. So then you just can't generate any more force. You just can't get any more muscle going. But here, as you relax, you return back to normal length, you open up this space here. So then you have this capacity to actually generate force in this area where the actin muscle cells are going to move across this way. All right. So when you're fully stretched out, so here, this is going to be your passive insufficiency. So because they've only got these like little bits where they can kind of touch onto and actually structurally connect to each other, so they can't generate a lot of force. So when your muscle's at the full length or the full range of movement, you tend to be in a bit of a weaker position. And then conversely, if you fully contract the muscle, because there's nowhere else to go, then you essentially don't have any more force you can actually contract, so you can't generate any more movement. So a healthy muscle should be able to go through that full range. So from fully lengthened position to a fully contracted position. Fully lengthened position, fully contracted. And when you're training in your exercise program, and it doesn't matter what program you're doing, whether it's strength training or if you're doing yoga or Pilates or functional bodyweight training or whatever label you want to put onto it, one of the key goals is you want to try to develop strength in both ranges. So you want to take this muscle through full range of movement at the short range and at the long range as well. That way you develop a really functional muscle. Now, what this means is you generally have to start quite light, because you're going to be weak at the long range, where you get passive insufficiency. So we put this in context of more of a exercise. So if we come back here to our lying leg curl example, here this is a nice hinge position. So you've got the hamstrings, they go at a stretch at about 140%, 160% of their length. And we bring it up to here. Now we've got the optimal length here. So you're lying down, you're about 80 degrees, 80% to 120% here in their length. So this is not talking about joint angle, it's just the length of the muscle. Now, if you do a leg curl, the muscle's going to contract more. So at this position here in a leg curl, this is going to be like where you're going to be strongest. Now, as you bring your heel closer to your butt and this muscle contracts, those cross-bridging fibers are going to shorten. And so as you're getting closer heel to bum, you're not going to be able to generate as much strength. So there's a sticking point, typically, depending on the mechanics of how machines are set up, where the muscle will have its optimal length. And that's usually going to be the hardest part of the exercise as well. So it's kind of this interesting part where you get where the muscle at its optimal contraction length, but also in terms of the physics of where the weight's going down, it can be the hardest part. So a lot of the like weightlifting machines are designed to match where your muscle is going to be at its optimal length to generate force. They'll often make that the hardest part of the movement. Okay, so that's one advantage of going into a gym and doing strength training in a gym. The machines often, if they're really well designed, facilitate really good adaptation in the muscles. Let me just slide this one forward a bit more. So here we get the complete contraction. So we've got 60% of the complete contraction here. So this muscle, the hamstrings now are almost fully shortened. So you're not going to be able to pull this heel down towards your butt much more, because as soon as those muscles get into the fully shortened position, they just can't generate any more force. If you wanted to go further, you'd have to compensate and bring in the glutes and the lower back muscles to kind of create more extension in the hip. All right. So that's essentially how active insufficiency works. Now, the problem is when people get an injury, okay, when people get an injury, there's often a guarding pattern that develops. So, for example, if you sprained your hamstring muscle, okay, one of the ways the body deals with that is it will tighten the muscle up, contract it, and kind of almost, but doesn't relax, doesn't let go. So that creates a very tight muscle, and it's doing that to basically protect the muscle while it's healing in the early phases. So it's quite a normal thing to do. Now, what happens is often people, they injure themselves, they pull a muscle and they don't really treat it. Okay, they just kind of let it go. And what happens is that muscle contraction, it heals the injured tissue, but it doesn't release the shortened position very well. And then you get a lot of adhesion and a lot of knotting. So if we go back into these fibers should be arranged in these nice kind of vertical lines. But when you get a muscle knot, what happens is that these contractile components, they don't release, so they stay contracted. Okay, so you can get parts of the muscle belly which have these really tight or contracted sarcomeres, which are sections of the muscles, and they don't release, they don't let go. So then we need techniques to help remind the body to say, okay, the tissue's healed, and you can release that contraction and come back to that resting position. Otherwise, you get stuck in these shortened positions. And when you get stuck in these shortened positions, then the muscle can't generate force. And because it's in a contracted position, reciprocal inhibition is going to essentially then go around to the front and relax the quadricep muscle. So then the quadricep muscle now is placed in passive insufficiency and it can't generate force. So then you get this kind of muscle imbalance happening. So a lot of the rehabilitation that we do is post initial acute phase of injury is we're trying to restore the muscle length tension so it can fully contract and elongate to its full range of movement. And here we might need to use some manual therapy techniques like remedial massage, cupping, trigger point therapy, dry needling, acupuncture to get into those muscle fibers which are bound up and tight and let them go and release so you can get that kind of nice contraction going. Now, the other cool thing here as well is if we go into like a calf raise. So in a seated calf raise, for example, all right, so we've got a seated calf raise here. The calves have two primary muscles. There's the soleus, which is a deep calf muscle, and you've got the gastrocnemius. Now, the gastrocnemius crosses the knee joint and the ankle joint. So if we just, so here's your gastrocnemius attaching to the femur, and then coming down into the Achilles tendon and then onto the calcaneus. And then underneath that here, this purple muscle, this is the soleus, and then it joins the Achilles tendon there as well. So what we get going on here is when you flex the knee, let's just slide forward more. So for example, in a standing calf raise where the knee is not bent, it's not flexed, it's straight, majority of the loading will go into the gastrocnemius as it's just primarily the larger muscle. Okay, you'll definitely get some soleus as well, but the gastroc will be doing the majority of the work there. I mean, keep in mind muscles work in units or in teams, so it's difficult to fully isolate. But when you take out the gastrocnemius by flexing the knee, what happens is that, slide forward. So here the gastrocnemius is now kind of in a shorter position. Okay, so it's not able to generate as much force. So it's in more of that active insufficiency position. So now the soleus will take over and generate more force in your calf raise. So in your calf raise here, so now the soleus, because the soleus doesn't cross the knee, so it's going to have more tension placed into it. So it's going to be able to lift that heel up more. So when we're doing rehabilitation, there's no difference really doing rehab and then doing strength training. It's just understanding the muscles and where they are in the body. And if you're trying to isolate, so if we're trying to rehab the calf muscle, okay, what we want to do is first we want to work out, is it the calf or is it the soleus? Okay. And then we add in exercises to restore the length of the tissue. And then we add in exercises to strengthen the tissue. So if we're trying to focus on the soleus, we do a seated heel raise. If we're trying to focus on the gastrocnemius, we'll do a standing calf raise. And typically I will do both, just so you're covering both bases through here. And then a little bit more detail. Usually most calf injuries are either here in the musculotendinous junction, so where the tendon goes in the muscle, or it's going to be in one of the bellies of the calf, either the medial or the lateral calf. So then if it's in the medial calf, because essentially they're combined together in this tendon, as long as you have very kind of neutral kind of foot position, you're going to recruit that kind of medial lateral head. But if you want to kind of focus on either one, you can just kind of slightly internally rotate the femur or externally rotate the femur, and that'll just slightly change the angle. So if you want to get into the medial aspect, you want to internally rotate the femur. So just point your toes in a little bit, and then you'll get more into the medial head. And then if you want to get into the lateral head, you just do the opposite. You just externally rotate the femur. So toes out, toes in. And it's just a little bit of toe out, toe in. And then you can feel it with your mind muscle connection. You can kind of get those muscles contracting. So that is passive and active insufficiency. In the video I'll link here, you can look at the video we did on passive insufficiency, which is where the muscle goes to its full range and it's fully lengthened, and then there's no more ability to cross bridge, so you can't generate force at the lengthened position or the stretch position. Whereas active insufficiency is when the muscle is contracted and then has no more force to generate. We want to be able to train through that full range of movement to get muscles that move the joints through their full range of movement. That's one of the secrets to having a happy and healthy body. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, please leave any comments, any questions, any thoughts you have got down there. Definitely jump on to the Muscle and Motion. It's a great app, really, really useful, and we will see you in the next video. All right, ciao.